Criminals will resort to extreme measures to lessen their sentences or escape justice entirely. Sometimes, their actions are shocking and repulsive, even by criminal standards. This is the story of how law enforcement apprehended a true master of deception and improvisation. Veronica Panarella, a young Italian woman, faced numerous challenges in her life. At 16, she met David Stival in a bar and was instantly captivated. Despite a 4-year age gap, they connected immediately, and she shared her life story with him that very night. They began dating, even though she was still in school. Just 3 months into their relationship, she expressed her desire to start a family. Veronica was certain she wanted a child with him. David agreed. They moved in together, and she soon became pregnant. Their son, Loris, was born in 2006 when Veronica was only 17 and David was 21. This period was marked by family strife. Veronica clashed constantly with her parents and was happy to leave home. The birth of a child out of wedlock further strained her relationship with her family. Despite her young age, Veronica managed to build a semblance of a family life. And against the expectations of her relatives, things seemed to be going well. Tragically, fate had a cruel twist in store. But until that moment, she strived to provide her child with everything he needed. Eventually, the couple married. Veronica became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, Diego. She still relied partially on her parents for support. David worked, but his income wasn't sufficient for a family of 4. Both families provided financial assistance. Veronica chose to be a stay-at-home mother, dedicating herself to her children and household. David considered her a good wife. She was frugal, organized, and a loving mother. The children grew, and Veronica shared a close bond with them, although their relationship sometimes resembled that of young friends. This was likely due to her young age when she became a mother. Many observed that she still exhibited rebellious tendencies, leading to more conflicts with her parents. They felt she couldn't be a proper mother if she treated parenthood like a game. Any attempt to reason with her resulted in hysterical outbursts. The family lived in Santa Croce Camarina, a small Sicilian village with a population of around 10,000, where everyone knew one another. Early motherhood was unusual there, but no one could have predicted the horrific tragedy that would unfold. Around 1 p.m. on November 29, 2014, Veronica Panarella arrived at the police station to report the disappearance of her 8-year-old son, Loris. She explained that she had driven him to school that morning, as usual. She claimed to have dropped him off at the school entrance with other children and then taken her younger son to kindergarten. Loris was supposed to be at school until 12:30. When she returned to pick him up, he was nowhere to be found. Distraught, she immediately filed a missing person report. The police went to the school, but no one had seen Loris that day. Students confirmed they hadn't seen him near the school or in class. They speculated he might have skipped school. Some considered the possibility of abduction, but no one believed Loris would willingly enter a stranger's car. He was too intelligent. Questions arose about how he could have disappeared if his mother had escorted him to school and seen him enter. David, Loris's father, was working as a truck driver in Rome at the time. He was 29, and Veronica was 25. The Carabinieri contacted him, and he was stunned by the news. Veronica hadn't even informed him. He immediately called her, and she confirmed Loris was missing. David flew back to Santa Croce Camarina. Upon arrival, he saw a social media post with a picture of his wife and son announcing that Loris had been found dead. The boy's body was discovered just 4 hours after the initial police report, dumped in a ditch near an old mill, minutes from the family home. An elderly hunter stumbled upon the body during his routine walk in the woods. He noticed something suspicious in the mud and, upon closer inspection, realized it was a child's body. He immediately alerted the authorities. Investigators found the boy's mutilated body unnaturally contorted in the ditch, his pants partially pulled down, and his underwear missing. Police suspected a sexual motive, believing they were dealing with a child molester who not only abused, but also murdered his victims, making him extremely dangerous. Panic gripped the community. People feared for their children, knowing a predator was at large. News of the murder spread rapidly throughout the country, dominating national headlines and becoming a major news story in 2014, deeply disturbing the public. People demanded justice. Detectives worked tirelessly to apprehend the perpetrator and restore a sense of security. Investigators immediately noticed unusual aspects of the crime, deviating from the typical patterns of rapists and other sexual predators. The strangest detail wasn't the missing underwear. It was the fact that after removing it, the perpetrator redressed the boy's pants. While offenders sometimes keep souvenirs, replacing clothing is highly unusual. Plus, there was no history of similar crimes in Santa Croce Camarina. Naturally, the police turned their attention to the victim's family. Veronica and Loris Stival were respected, known as a loving couple. Although Veronica had Loris young, she was now a mature woman and appeared to be a devoted mother. In such cases, families often hold key information, so investigators interview the parents. They discovered Davida, a truck driver, spent limited time at home, no more than 50 days a month. Loris was primarily in his mother's care, leaving Veronica often alone, struggling with childcare and household chores. She frequently voiced these difficulties. Her isolation fueled rumors of infidelity, though these proved unsubstantiated. Police found Veronica devastated. Davida reported she was inconsolable, refusing food, becoming dangerously thin, and requiring hospitalization for intravenous nutrition. Officers witnessed her distress firsthand. She was emotionally and physically broken, with dark circles and pale skin. Loris's younger brother, Diego, initially remained with the family, but was later sent to his grandparents due to Veronica's fragile state. She was neglecting herself and Diego. Davida, supporting his wife, had to quit his job. Despite their grief, both parents were taken to the discovery site, their reactions recorded. The video shows Veronica as a shell of a person, her sorrow palpable. Suspicion fell upon Horatio Fedona, the hunter who found Loris. His discovery, just 4 hours after the boy was reported missing, seemed too quick. While coincidence was possible, investigators probed Fedona's involvement. He passed a polygraph, had a solid alibi, and his DNA and fingerprints weren't on Loris. The scrutiny, however, sparked local gossip about Veronica's alleged relationships with Fedona and his grandson. Rigorous investigation cleared Fedona, confirming his accidental discovery. The case stalled, lacking leads and evidence. Carabinieri reinforcements from Rome were called in. Reviewing the details, they suspected Veronica's involvement, focusing on her strained family relationships. The grandparents mentioned Loris describing a school experiment requiring plastic cable ties a day before his disappearance. This raised flags. Cable ties are dangerous and unsuitable for school activities. Teachers confirmed no such experiment existed. Initially dismissed as a child's fabrication, the cable ties resurfaced after the autopsy report. The report placed Loris's death between 9 to 10 a.m. on the day he vanished. The cause? Strangulation with a thin object. Cable ties seemed a likely culprit. The proximity of the body to the murder scene suggested Loris was killed nearby, either thrown there after death or fatally injured and left to die. Perhaps Loris wanted the ties, inventing the school story. This meant he likely carried them in his blue backpack. But how would an attacker know? It seemed improbable a stranger would search the backpack for a weapon. The Carabinieri prioritized finding the backpack, believing it held crucial clues. Landfills receiving Santa Croce Camarina's waste were searched for days. But the backpack remained elusive. The autopsy also revealed another anomaly. Despite the missing underwear and lowered pants, there was no evidence of sexual assault or foreign DNA. This challenged the initial theory of a sexually motivated crime. The police now faced an atypical offender. Creating a psychological profile was crucial, but the available information was too fragmented. The solution was clear: retrace Veronica and Loris's movements on that fateful day. Despite the town's small size, their route along the main street was covered by numerous security cameras. I spent a considerable amount of time sifting through the video footage. Law enforcement, of course, looked for a third party, perhaps a detective, trailing the woman and her son in the black Volkswagen Polo, possibly followed by a suspicious vehicle. Despite their best efforts, the investigators couldn't identify anything out of the ordinary or pertinent to the case. However, certain anomalies quickly surfaced. For one, they never observed the boy entering the school, even though his mother, Veronica, insisted she'd walked him practically to the school's entrance. It became evident Veronica wasn't being truthful. They hadn't reached the school that morning. After reviewing countless hours of recordings, they only saw the younger child exiting the car near the daycare. Investigators continued to examine surveillance footage from the surrounding area, searching for any clues. They discovered that at an intersection Veronica typically drove through, she instead turned towards the church near where the victim was later discovered. This seemed peculiar, as she had used a different route for years. What could have prompted a young mother to alter her routine on the very day her son was found dead? This naturally raised red flags for the Carabinieri. At this juncture, the officers chose to withhold their findings to avoid alarming Veronica. However, they now viewed the young woman as a person of interest. Seasoned officers decided to immediately verify her account. They asked Veronica to accompany them, retracing the route she claimed to have taken on the day of the child's death, allowing her to demonstrate it firsthand. They already knew the route, having meticulously reconstructed it using CCTV footage. She agreed, and the reconstruction began. As the police car approached the critical intersection where Veronica had deviated from her usual path, she lied, claiming to have taken her typical route. There was no longer any doubt she was intentionally concealing information. Her deception made her the prime suspect, leading detectives to search the Stival family home and bring Veronica in for questioning. Realizing she was considered a potential murderer, Veronica became agitated, vehemently denying any harm to her son, but the investigators remained unconvinced. The interrogation stretched on for hours, with Veronica steadfastly maintaining her innocence. During questioning, she admitted to dropping her older son off 500 meters from school, claiming she was rushed and the boy had to walk the remaining distance. She suggested someone might have attacked him along the way. When asked about her presence near the ravines on the morning of the murder, Veronica denied being there, claiming complete unfamiliarity with the area. This, of course, was untrue. Veronica's sister confirmed they had frequented the area as children, knowing it intimately, and security footage corroborated Veronica's presence there. Detectives had to pore over countless hours of recordings to validate their suspicions and unearth further leads. The murdered boy's father, Davide, was brought in. Initially, he couldn't believe his wife was implicated in their son's death. Davide did identify his wife and 2 children in the surveillance footage leaving the house that morning. However, instead of taking her older son to school, she returned home with him. A figure resembling Loris appeared in the footage, then vanished. Afterwards, Veronica took the younger child to daycare and returned home. Uncharacteristically, she didn't park in front of the house, but reversed into the garage. This occurred around 9 a.m. Detectives believe the boy was killed during this time frame. He was absent from school and at home, and while Veronica was in the garage, she was doing something out of sight of the cameras. It all appeared highly suspicious. It felt like she was deliberately concealing something. When confronted, she continued to profess her innocence, claiming she dropped the older child at school, then the younger child at daycare, before returning home to her usual routine. She insisted he might have been abducted just before school. However, the police were skeptical. They observed Veronica leaving the house again at 9:23 a.m. on camera, and just 2 minutes later, she was driving towards the old mill where Loris's body was discovered. She returned home at 9:38 a.m., demonstrably alone. Given the swift sequence of events, the child was likely already deceased when she disposed of his body. At 9:41 a.m., Veronica departed for her regular cooking class, which began at 10 a.m. She left early to avoid being late and arousing suspicion. No one at the class noticed anything unusual about her demeanor. She appeared as she always did. Her phone and car GPS data confirmed the itinerary the detectives had pieced together. Unfortunately, the police still lacked sufficient evidence to formally charge her. So, while Veronica remained in custody, investigators continued to gather information. They still had no physical evidence, witness testimony, or recordings of the mother harming her son. Just as it seemed the perpetrator was about to be exposed, a policewoman stationed outside the school contacted the station. She claimed to have seen Veronica drop her child off at school on the day of the murder. However, the investigators didn't accept her statement at face value. Her account contradicted the video evidence. Since Veronica traversed this route daily, performing the same actions, the officer might have simply confused the dates. Meanwhile, Veronica remained incarcerated, vehemently proclaiming her innocence, but a seed of doubt had been planted. When the Carabinieri informed her husband about Veronica's lies regarding the route taken to drop off Loris, he too began to question her behavior, siding with the investigation. The police recognized an opportunity to secure evidence. Knowing Veronica trusted her husband, they arranged for him to visit her, hoping he could elicit a confession or new information. After all, Veronica was the only person with a complete picture of that fateful morning. Davide agreed it was a good strategy, but stated he didn't want to contribute to her conviction. Driven by a desire to uncover the truth, he consented to a face-to-face meeting with his wife, Veronica, within the confines of the prison, sans any electronic surveillance. On January 6, 2015, a month after the tragic death of their child, David visited his incarcerated wife. Though prison regulations typically barred him from such access, an exception was made in hopes of shedding light on the crime. Upon their encounter, Veronica's first concern, before even a greeting, was to ascertain whether David was wearing a listening device. He reassured her, demonstrating he carried no recording equipment. Indeed, he had none, as the prison's own cameras documented the exchange. Veronica maintained her innocence, steadfastly denying any involvement in the incident. She reiterated her account of events, dropping her son, Loris, at school and having no knowledge of his subsequent fate. This narrative remained consistent in her interactions with the police, her lawyer, her husband, and family visitors. Detectives struggled to establish a link between the mother and the tragedy. Even a motive remained elusive, as her reputation within the community was that of a loving and devoted mother. While rumors circulated, investigations into these whispers yielded nothing concrete. All evidence pointed to Veronica being a caring parent. The sole avenue the detective considered plausible was a potential bout of depression or emotional instability. The prime suspect was, in fact, experiencing a profound state of despair, compounded by her confinement. As the investigation stalled, a new strategy emerged. Authorities orchestrated a visit to Loris's grave, intending to observe Veronica's unguarded reactions. Surrounded by a convoy of 10 police vehicles, she arrived at the gravesite. The scene suggested the transport of a dangerous criminal. Unbeknownst to Veronica, the tombstone was equipped with a listening device. Officers anticipated an apology or a confession, a private moment of truth between mother and son. Veronica did speak, but her words defied expectations. She wept, prayed, and vowed to find and punish the perpetrator. This declaration stunned the Carabinieri. She was returned to her cell, leaving investigators perplexed. During the return journey, Veronica claimed a sudden surge of fragmented memories related to the day of Loris's disappearance. However, she withheld these details from the authorities, requesting another meeting with her husband. On November 6, 2015, David again visited Veronica, their conversation, like all prison visits, duly recorded. This time, Veronica confessed to a critical deviation from her original account. She admitted to not taking Loris to school that day, attributing her lapse to a disorienting, fog-like state, a detachment from reality. From her fragmented recollections, she pieced together a narrative of taking her younger child to kindergarten, returning home where Loris was supposed to be. She had left him as he was reluctant to attend school. Upon returning, Veronica's altered perception led her to believe she had already taken Loris to school. The realization of her mistake only dawned upon her during the afternoon school pickup. Law enforcement remained skeptical, suspecting a fabricated story designed to mitigate her culpability. However, this sensed a breakthrough. The memory lapse defense was viewed as an attempt to lessen her sentence. Yet, some considered her psychological state a genuine concern. Her youngest child, too young to provide a reliable account, couldn't corroborate or refute the presence of his brother that day. Despite their suspicions, the Carabinieri facilitated a visit to Veronica's home, hoping familiar surroundings might trigger further recollections. Inside the house, preserved in its state from the day of Loris's death, a dramatic scene unfolded. In Loris's room, Veronica began to speak in her son's voice, reenacting a conversation she claimed to have had with him that morning. Her detached demeanor solidified the detective's conviction that they were dealing with a manipulative liar attempting to misdirect the investigation. But could a person in sound mental health maintain such a deception for over a year? Numerous specialists had examined Veronica, unable to detect any fabrication. Her lawyer maintained that her actions stemmed from a genuine mental affliction. Eventually, Veronica offered a new version of events, one that continues to hold sway with some, despite police reservations. According to this account, Veronica returned home from dropping off her younger child and proceeded to wash baby bottles. Loris remained home, refusing to go to school. While attending to chores, Veronica heard nothing unusual. Entering Loris's room later, she discovered his lifeless body, cable ties constricting his neck. He had apparently been playing with the ties, fashioning them into a necklace, and inadvertently tightened them. His startled eyes, frozen in fear, met hers. He had tugged at the ties, attempting to loosen them, only tightening the noose. Understanding the mechanism, Veronica realized she couldn't break the ties with her bare hands. Rushing to the kitchen for scissors, she returned to find Loris unconscious and not breathing. Panic seized her. She fumbled for her phone, attempting to dial emergency services, but her trembling hands couldn't connect the call. The realization that she would be blamed overwhelmed her. In her distraught state, she resolved to dispose of the body. A subsequent forensic examination revealed scratches on Loris's face and neck, consistent with attempts to remove the ties with fingernails. Investigators theorized that in her panic, Veronica might have inadvertently tightened a cable tie, further restricting Loris's airway. At this point, the police sought clarification, hoping to unearth additional memories. The case of Loris Stival remains shrouded in mystery. Returning to the ravine, Veronica Panerillo admitted to discarding her son's body there, yet maintained she hadn't killed him. Her claim was weakened by her inability to explain the missing underwear, a detail that contradicted her narrative. The prosecution also questioned how an intelligent 8-year-old could have tightly bound his own neck with zip ties without crying for help. Veronica's later explanation, that the ravine's depth caused the pants to slip and twist during the fall, seemed improbable. Prosecutors challenged her confession, highlighting her unusual behavior as a major red flag. One such anomaly was Veronica's peculiar parking in the garage, a position that would have facilitated discreetly loading a body. This occurred before she supposedly knew of Loris's death, implying premeditation in the eyes of the prosecution. The defense, however, argued that Loris died accidentally, and a panicked Veronica, overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation, disposed of the body. Yet, Veronica couldn't explain why she removed Loris's underwear and then redressed him. Claiming memory loss, she offered no satisfactory answer. The prosecution suspected this was a staged attempt to mimic a sexual assault and misdirect the investigation, a tactic that initially worked. The case took a dramatic turn when Veronica accused Andrea Stival, Loris's paternal grandfather, of the murder. She alleged an affair with him and claimed Loris witnessed them together, threatening to expose them to his father. Andrea, in a supposed fit of rage, strangled the boy. Despite the outlandish accusation, investigators meticulously reviewed the evidence. CCTV footage showed Veronica leaving the house around 9:30 a.m. with a dark figure in the car's back seat. Though initially concerning, Expert analysis revealed it to be a reflection, not a person. Andrea Stival vehemently denied both the affair and the murder, dismissing Veronica's claims as fabrications. His alibi checked out, and the lack of communication between them further discredited Veronica's story. Veronica's erratic behavior throughout the investigation, marked by episodes of singing during interrogations, sudden shift from coherent speech to mumbling and enacting imaginary actions like smoking, raised concerns about her mental state. Her mother revealed Veronica's history of mental health struggles, including past suicide attempts and a claim of sexual assault that was never substantiated. Despite this history, a psychiatric evaluation deemed Veronica to be of sound mind, capable of calculated cruelty. After a 4-year trial punctuated by delays and additional investigations, she was convicted of premeditated murder and concealing a body, receiving a 30-year sentence. During the sentencing, Veronica erupted in another outburst, reiterating her accusations against Andrea Stival, before being removed from the court. To this day, Veronica remains incarcerated, the full truth about Loris's death possibly lost forever. Investigators largely believe it wasn't an accident, but a planned, brutal act, perhaps stemming from an argument about school attendance. A theory suggests a fit of rage led Veronica to strangle Loris with zip ties and dispose of the body, removing the underwear to confuse investigators. The pre-purchased zip ties hint at an even more sinister possibility of premeditation. Devastated by the loss of his son, wife, and job, Loris's father, David, remains unsure of Veronica's guilt, baffled by the lack of a clear motive. Having never witnessed Veronica act violently towards their children, he remembers her as a caring mother. Now, he focuses on raising his younger son, supported by his parents. If you found this insightful, please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Check out the recommended videos for more compelling content. Thanks for watching.